Hi, this is Steve, K8BZ. In the next few videos, we'll be going over SYSOP functions and responsibilities. And this is primarily intended for people who are responsible for managing a packet station in a remote location, someplace where it's not directly connected to a computer and it's usually unmanned or unstaffed. There is a way to manage those stations remotely without having to go to the site, and either the trustees of those club call signs or the person who sets up his own remote packet station using his own call sign needs to be aware of how to manage that remotely to avoid having to drive to the site every time you have to correct some problems or take care of a malfunction of the TNC. Or any number of things, and we'll go over those. In this first video, the only thing I'm going to cover is how to set up remote access to your TNC at a remote site, so you can connect to it, change commands, and manage the bulletin board without having to actually go to the site. In the videos that follow, we'll actually demonstrate and explain how to do those things, but the first thing you need to do is to get access to the site. Now for that you need two commands. We're going to use the dumb terminal program, IP serial. The two commands you're going to need are the myremote command and the remote text command. Those are the two commands that you need to set in order to connect to your TNC remotely and be given SYSOP privileges on that TNC. You always have SYSOP privileges on any TNC that you're directly connected to via computer. So your TNC at home, you always have SYSOP privileges on that. But a remote TNC, you need to log in to the remote call sign and correctly decode remote text and think of that as a password, and then the TNC will give you SYSOP privileges during that connection. Then when you disconnect, you no longer have SYSOP privileges. You have the same privileges any other packet station would have when they connect to the bulletin board or to any other node or anything else when you're connected to the TNC. Now the first command we're going to talk about is the myremote command, and that's the call sign that allows access to the remote control portion of the station. The next one is the rtext, abbreviated RT. That's a text string used for remote authorization. So I usually set the myremote call sign to whatever the primary call sign is with the SSID of 2. So the station we're going to connect to is W8GDW, and I have the remote call sign set to -2. Oops, better use the connect command. W8GDW-2. And after you're connected to that, you're going to be given 3 lines of numbers. Those lines of numbers, each of those numbers in any individual line represent a character in the remote text command setting. Now in this particular TNC that I'm attempting to connect to, the remote text command is set to "this is the remote text." It's case sensitive. Most of the commands that you enter in a TNC are not case sensitive. If you enter them in lowercase, the TNC is going to convert them to uppercase. That's not true with the remote text command. Whatever you enter, including spaces, is going to be stored in that remote text command. So we already have the remote call sign command set. It's W8GDW-2. The remote text command is set to "this is the remote text." Now each character in this remote text string is consecutively numbered, and that's what these numbers represent in these lines. What you have to do is correctly decode any one of those 3 lines and enter that in the TNC. If you do it correctly, you'll be granted SYSOP privileges for that connection. If you don't enter them correctly, you'll get 2 more chances. It'll give you another set of 3 lines of numbers, and you can try again. Then if you don't correctly decode it, It'll give you a third set of numbers, and you need to try to decode one. So I'm going to intentionally put an error in decoding one of the lines. So let's try to decode the second line that begins with the number 4. Now we'll have to look down here. The number 4 is a lowercase s, so we're going to enter a lowercase s. Number 14 is a lowercase e. Number 7 is a lowercase s. Number 4, again, is a lowercase s. Number 14, we're getting a lot of repeats here, and that's fine, is a lowercase e, and number 20 is an uppercase t. Now I'm going to change that uppercase t and just put in a lowercase t. Now that didn't correctly decode it, so it's going to return a third set of numbers. Now let's try to decode the first line that begins with number 3. Lowercase I, 15 is lowercase m, 8 is a space, and spaces are valid characters. 17 is a lowercase t, 20 is an uppercase t, and 12 is another space. Now, when I enter that, since it was correctly decoded, it's going to return the word prompt and a colon. Think of that as the command prompt in your own TNC. This is the command prompt that you will get when you connect remotely to another TNC. Now, once you're connected, you can display the command settings. The my command is the my call command, and it tells you what that setting is. You can do the display ID. Now, it won't return every command. It'll only do a certain number of characters, and it'll stop. So it's not going to give you everything. You see, that's where it finally stopped. If you tried to display the full command set using the display command, it would only display a set number of the commands, and it will stop. So you can't necessarily display every command in one operation. You might have to display individual commands. Something else you need to know, and I'll cover it when we get into that. As you may remember, the commands like the num nodes, the number of nodes that are allowed, if you change that command, it will cause a soft reset of the TNC. So right now we're connected by radio to this TNC. If I change the num nodes from 2 to 3, it would make the change, but right after the change was made, it would cause a soft reset of that TNC, and we would lose the connection. So if you're making some changes to commands, be aware that some of the commands, num nodes, max users, there are probably some others, but those are the two that come to mind right away, will cause a soft reset. So if you lose connection, be aware that it could be that you changed a command that does cause a soft reset. Now, we're not going to get into right now what to do with this information or what you can do with these commands remotely. We're going to cover that in upcoming videos. Now, you cannot disconnect from a remote connection by sending the disconnect command for a node or a bulletin board. Disconnect command for a node or a bulletin board is the letter B. If I send that, it's just going to return the beacon setting, what the setting is for the beacon command in this TNC. So the only way to disconnect is to get a command prompt from your own TNC, doing a Control-C. It will give you the command prompt, and then enter the disconnect character, which is the letter D, and it will disconnect you. Okay, so that's half of the remote connection information you need. The other half is connecting to the bulletin board and getting the SYSOP privileges. So we'll do that. Now let's connect to the bulletin board. W8GDW-1 is the bulletin board. You don't use a special call sign to connect to the bulletin board and get SYSOP privileges. Just use the regular bulletin board call sign. Then when you get the first input prompt, and this only works after the first input prompt, you have to enter the word SYSOP. If you list the messages first and then enter SYSOP, it won't work. It'll just give you another input prompt. But at the first first input prompt, if you enter SYSOP, again, it will give you 3 lines to decode, and you can pick any one of the lines and decode it. Let's decode the second line. 5 is a space, 3 is an I, another I, 15 is an M, 21 is an E, 12 is another space. Now, if you didn't correctly decode it, again, it would give you 3 new sets of numbers, and you would get 3 attempts to decode it. And the same is true for the bulletin board as it is for the regular command set. If you don't decode it after 3 attempts, it will disconnect you and it will lock you out from trying to connect with SYSOP privileges for a period of time, and I think it's 15 minutes. It doesn't do it forever, but you have to wait a period of time, and then you can try over again, and again you'll get, each time you try, you'll get 3 attempts, and if you don't decode it correctly, you will be disconnected and have to wait for the waiting period. So if you correctly decode it, it's just going to give you the input prompt for the bulletin board. So I'm just going to list messages. A SYSOP can do lots of things with the messages in a bulletin board. The SYSOP, it will list every single message in the bulletin board for you. If you don't connect with SYSOP privileges, it's only going to list bulletins and messages that are either to you or from you. So if there are messages on the bulletin board for other people that aren't from you, you won't be able to list them unless you log in with SYSOP privileges. And since you are the person responsible for the bulletin board, you need to be able to see everything that's going on the bulletin board, since you are legally responsible for what that bulletin board is doing. Now we'll get into other things later on, but you can do various things like let's take message number 200. I'm going to edit message number 200, and I'm going to change that. That's now going to go to W8DMI. So that edited that. Let me list it. It no longer is addressed to K8EO, it's addressed to W8DMI. But we'll put that back where it was. We're going to edit 200 and make that be addressed to K8EO again, where it originally belonged. Now that's just one of many things that you will be able to do with SYSOP privileges in the bulletin board, and we'll get into explaining what all of those are in the upcoming videos. So for now, we're going to stop at this point. If you are responsible for a remote bulletin board and you don't already have SYSOP privileges enabled on that by setting your My Remote call sign and your rtext command, the only way to do that is to go to the site, take a laptop or a computer with you, plug it into the TNC, and set those 2 commands. Or you can go to the site, get the TNC, bring it home, plug it into your home computer, and set those at home. Then take it back to the site and reinstall it at the site. If you are responsible for that packet station, it's very important that you do this. There have been TNCs that have been installed in remote locations and neglected by the people responsible for them, and they've malfunctioned, caused continuous QRM and interference on the frequency for a long period of time before the people responsible have either figured out something went wrong or decided to do something about it. So we want to make sure everybody that is responsible for a remote packet station is also aware of their responsibilities, and we're going to explain those in the next few videos. So as always, if you have any questions or problems, please feel free to email me at k8bz@arrl.net, and we will work together to get any issues resolved. Thank you.